Dan Hooker just confirmed he is going to be fighting at UFC 305 next. He says the UFC wasn't wanting him to do that. The UFC did not like that fight, or not that fight, did not like Dan Hooker to fight on UFC 305 as they were looking to put Dan Hooker on another card. A few main events they were looking at for Dan Hooker on a later date. One of the offers was against Beneil Dariush for a later date. I am assuming a main event. But he rejected all of those. UFC did not want him at UFC 305 for whatever reason. They wanted to give him Beneil. They wanted to give him some of the other fighters in that top 10 and top 15 of the UFC lightweight division. Dan said he stood his ground. He said, nope, I'm not fighting on a later date. I am fighting at UFC 305. I want to fight on UFC 305. Just let me fight at UFC 305. The UFC finally said, all right, we'll give it to you. You're fighting at UFC 305. That is where Dan Hooker is at right now. And he said he will be joining Kai Kara France and Israel Adesanya for a solid main card. Dan Hooker, Kai Kara, Israel Adesanya. That's already 3 fights on that main card. And of course, there's rumors swirling around. We made a post, I believe, 2 days ago. The rumors swirling around. Alex Pereira, Yuri Prochazka rematch at UFC 305 as well. I think that's a good enough main card for me. Maybe but Tai Tuivasa also on that main card. You do. Israel Adesanya, Dricus du Plessis, main event. Then you do Alex Pereira, Yuri Prochazka, co-main event. You then do. Let's think about it for a second. Who do we want right before that co-main? Let me check out those heavyweight divisions. I want to put Tai on that main card. Tai is ranked 10th right now. I want to do Derek versus Jairzinho, so I'm going to give Tai someone unranked. Let's do Tai Tuivasa versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. Amazing striking battle as the 3rd fight on the main card. Then you got Kai Kara France, Steve Erceg. Boom, straight fire. And you got Dan Hooker opening up the main card against whoever. I like him versus Fiziev. Personally, I don't know if they would give him a fight with Rafael Fiziev. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I like him versus Fiziev. I don't think Beneil would be ready by that date, so probably not. They could do Moicano on that date. But that's pretty much all the options. That's pretty much it. It's Moicano, it's Beneil Dariush, or it's Rafael Fiziev. I don't think there's many other things you could do for UFC 305, and I don't think Beneil's going to do it, so I think it'll come down to Fiziev or Renato Moicano. And I think a better fight would be him versus Fiziev, but for the casuals, they probably like to see a nice grudge match, if you will, between Dan Hooker and Renato Moicano. So maybe they do that as the opening main card fight. I wouldn't mind it. Dan Hooker, Renato is a good fight. They both beat Jalen Turner recently. They're both ranked right around the same. They're both on good win streaks. I wouldn't mind it. So why not? Let's do Renato Dan Hooker, or you do Fiziev Dan Hooker. It's a good main card, though, in my opinion. UFC 305, I think, in this scenario, would be really good. Would be really good. Adesanya Dricus, Alex versus Yuri, Tai Tuivasa versus anyone, really. But Waldo Cortez Acosta could make some sense. Kai Kara France, Steve Erceg, they've already agreed to fight. Obviously, they haven't signed or anything. And then Dan Hooker versus Fiziev or Moicano. I like it, but yeah, put what you guys think. Is that a good fight? Is it not? Or not a good fight? Are those good fights? And what do you guys think about these 3 mainstay Australian and New Zealanders? Officially announced they will be fighting at UFC 305. Put your thoughts down below.